We are on, and welcome to Exhibit A podcast. Today's topic, we're going to talk about the importance of hiring a forensic accountant in dissolution matters. And our guest today is Jennifer Magnes. Hello.
Hi there.
How are
Hi.
you?
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. We've been trying to get you on the show, and we've canceled on you a few times. I'm really happy that you stayed with us. This is going to be a good one because we're talking about a very serious matter in family court. A lot of times, we talk about topics that don't involve math. They don't involve, complex issues. But today we're going to be talking about an expert about complicated matters. But we're going to keep it simple, right, Jennifer?
Always.
Okay. Well, you have a way of breaking things down, and that's what I like. So our viewers should know that Jennifer Magnes is a senior partner in the accounting and litigation services firm of White, Zuckerman, Warsofsky, Luna, and Hunt. She is primarily focused on family law litigation support. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
I always found that interesting when I came into family court. I was a deputy DA for many years. I was a police detective. I get into family law, and I realized that there's a firm out there, the firm that you work for and that you're a partner of, that actually is like, kind of like the crime lab. Because as a DA, we used to have the benefit of calling up the crime lab for like anything, drug results, DUI testing, all kinds of experts. And you always wondered about in the private sector how good they are. But you guys really are way up there, man. And it's a comfort because I could tell you that most family law attorneys, we don't know, how to handle this stuff. And we couldn't handle it without you. So,
well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And we do take great pride in making ourselves experts that are well-versed in the areas that we do testify to and participate in.
Yeah, and without a doubt, you and your firm are at the very top. And I try to go to you as quickly as I can before the other side does. Let's talk about, some of the things that qualify you. You've testified in Superior Court as an expert, and you've assisted hundreds of clients settle their cases. Our firm has used you multiple times, and we will continue using you.
Thank you.
I know that you have a BA in business economics and an emphasis on accounting. And you and I talked about this before. You're a graduate of Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara.
Yes, UCSB, go Gauchos.
Where my daughter graduated, and so we have that in common. How did you decide that you wanted to get into business economics and accounting out of all the things that you could do?
So I've always been a number person. I actually started my college career as a math major, hoping to do a stats minor, thinking maybe I wanted to be an actuary or something of that nature, but didn't really like the theoretical math, liked more the mechanical math. And getting into the nitty-gritty details of things. And UCSB actually had a great accounting program. It was something they really pushed there. So when I switched majors over to business economics, I really fell in love with accounting and doing accounting work without really knowing how I was going to apply it. In school, it's very audit or tax based. So I really didn't know anything about forensic accounting when I was in school, but knew I loved numbers and knew that's something I wanted to pursue.
Okay. And speaking of numbers and your qualifications, you're a certified public accountant and you hold numerous other accreditations. We don't even have time to read all your accreditations. I saw it on your website, but quite accomplished. And like I said, you're already a partner at this great firm.
Yes, I'm a senior partner. I'm actually the youngest senior partner.
When did you start there?
I started in 2004. So it's been almost 16 years.
Okay. Well, let's start with kind of an easy one for you, I think. What is a forensic accountant?
A forensic accountant is a financial expert who's going to render opinions in a matter, usually for litigation purposes. So it's someone who's going to investigate issues to render their opinion.
Okay. And sometimes you're even appointed by the court to be a neutral. So you're not always hired by individuals. Sometimes the court appoints you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, that happens quite often.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And now, who in your mind needs a forensic accountant in family law cases?
So anybody who has assets that are quite complicated, even some that you're just maybe carving out a separate property component to an asset for property division. People who own their own businesses typically need a financial expert to figure out what their actual income available for support is or to value a business. Anyone with any sort of complicated financial issue, even if it's just a small one, typically requires a financial expert.
Okay. do all family law cases need the assistance of a forensic accountant?
No.
Okay.
I mean, there's plenty of cases where there's not much there to divide, or it's not anything where it's other than 50-50 division, or it's just really based around the children. That's not something that would require our services.
Okay. And I guess, in some instances, even if there's financial issues, they're simple issues, and they wouldn't really justify getting a forensic accountant.
Sure.
Okay.
Of course.
So, in your opinion, are there family law matters that absolutely require forensic accounting?
Well, I wouldn't say absolutely require, but I think it is helpful in many cases. Our job is really to educate the court, to educate the judges, and to assist the parties to negotiate their cases, because it's really difficult to negotiate in a black hole. If you don't know what the values of certain assets are, or if you don't know which portion of the estate is separate versus community, or if you don't know what true income is, it's very hard to agree or disagree on numbers. Who's going to get what payments are going to be made and who's going to pay them. So in those cases, it's very helpful, I think, for us to come in and provide an opinion or at least a range of value or something to help the negotiations if litigation is not the route that the case is taking. If it is litigation-based, oftentimes the judge is going to need information to help make a decision, and so we would help with that decision-making.
Okay. Now, if you were to ask me that question, Jennifer, I'd probably answer it differently, because I actually think that there are some cases that if the people want a fair resolution, you don't want to go into a gunfight with a knife, and you don't want to be swinging in the dark, right? If you don't know anything about the other side's income or how much something's valued, you're just guessing, and you're at a disadvantage. So
my favorite line is, "My crystal ball is broken."
Yeah.
You have to be able to know what you're dealing with in order to make the right decision.
Yeah, I can't tell you how frustrating it is when you're dealing with somebody that has the potential of doing well in a settlement, but doesn't want to spend the money to get a forensic accountant. And you're like, look, I can't testify. Even if I knew what your business was valued at, I can't take the stand and testify. You aren't qualified. You're biased. I don't care what your tax preparer is telling you. That's not a forensic accountant, and stuff. And that's really why I wanted to do this today is because so many people out there are maybe hesitant or not trusting that whether or not they need one and stuff. But in my mind, anytime there's complex family law matters, and we'll talk about the type that they are, I think that they do need a forensic accountant.
Yeah, I mean, I think people also don't realize that family law is so specialized. So you really have to know the laws and the rules and the way things are done in order to present your case properly. I actually just had a case where the husband was an accountant, but not a forensic accountant. And he was trying to prove his separate property, but was unable to prepare any sort of tracing analysis because he doesn't know how. He's a CPA. He works for a Big Four firm. He does really well in that industry, but doesn't know family law. And I think it makes a very big difference.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because we're going to talk about that a little bit later, about you and your firm and how you know family law. That's why we go to you so often, because there is a huge difference with somebody that is schooled on the cases and the codes and knows how to apply the forensic accounting versus those that don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the most common services that you perform in family law cases.
Sure. So we're really helping with the property division and the support aspects of cases. So for support, it's figuring out true income. If someone has their own business, it's adding back all the personal expenses that are being run through it, making maybe some adjustments if the income isn't showing what is actually available to live and pay support on. When we're dealing with property division, we're basically valuing the entire estate, using appraisals for real estate that are prepared by third parties, or the bank statements. We usually have to value a business ourselves, using whatever methodologies are available from family law perspectives. We're carving out the community in separate portions of assets, which requires tracing and other analysis per the code and per case law. So those are the types of things that we would do to, again, assist the parties and assist the court with dividing assets and providing support, either spousal support or child support.
Okay. Well, what I've learned from working with you is that as long as I have you on my side, then there's a comfort level that I normally wouldn't have. But I always say to my clients that there's at least 5 reports that we may be creating, and I'm sure that you've got other ones that you do. But if they're in a business, there's the business evaluation, right?
Yes.
There's the cash flow analysis.
Yes, the income analysis.
You do your tracing reports for us.
Yes.
And there's a marital standard of living report that you've conducted. And then the big one that I don't think I'd ever do it without is the balance sheet. Because at the end, you're taking a look at everything and making suggestions during the settlement process and even going to court.
Yeah, the community property balance sheet is the most invaluable report that we have because it really lays out the entire estate, what the value is, who's getting what, how it should be divided, and at the end of the day, does anyone owe anybody money? And as you negotiate the case or you decide really where the assets are going, that report changes and moves and really is invaluable to settling a case.
And I remember working with you in negotiations that that's where the accounting becomes like lawyering in some respects, because what you're doing is you're telling us where the strengths and weaknesses are of the particular claims, and you give us a good idea as to what concessions could be made and other ones that we're really strong on. I really appreciated that process. With regard to the business evaluation, that one is something that has always confused me, and I'm glad that you're able to do that. We're not going to get into business evaluations today, okay? Well, that's a different topic that maybe Jennifer could come back and talk to us about. But with respect to that, there's people that come in and they want to do it in a way that they did it in New York with selling a business, and what they don't know is that there's a particular set of cases regarding that, and there's some customs and things that are done ordinarily here in California that may not be done in other places, right?
Oh, absolutely. California has very specific case law when it comes to appraising businesses. And one thing I think that always throws off people is they say, well, I'm the business, so there's no value to it but for me. And in California, that's great. So you have value to your business, which may be you, maybe somebody else, maybe you have employees, maybe you don't. But even as an attorney, if you were even a solo practitioner, we could value that business and place a value on it, even though it's just you and you wouldn't be able to sell it. But that is something that is done in California.
Yeah, and unfortunately for professionals like solo practitioners, the court's going to make the person keep the business and pay for half of it, whether they could sell it or not.
Yeah.
Okay, and so cash flow analysis is a very, very interesting one, and becomes where the detective work really is in. What are some of the things that you do to determine what a person's cash flow is?
Sure. Well, we're looking really at all sources of income. So where does all the income come from? Are you a W-2 employee? Even that can have income from multiple sources under that employment, whether it's stock options or just a base salary, bonuses. Do you get anything additional from your efforts, commissions, from working for an employer? If someone owns their own business, we would be looking at the net income of the business and adding back maybe any personal write-offs that are being run through the business. We'd be looking at interest and dividends from accounts and seeing, well, are they undervaluing? Are they underperforming? Are they not investing their money properly? Are they just having $5 million sitting in a bank account earning no interest? Maybe we need to make some adjustments. We're looking at rental properties and what are the net rents from that property after you make certain adjustments to the tax returns. So we're really just looking at all sources of income to make sure that the support amount that's being paid is reasonable based on the circumstances at hand. That's also looking for undisclosed income. And oftentimes we have people, especially if they own their own business, where it's not all disclosed. And so we may have to do some additional analysis for that. That's not the typical case, but that happens, often.
Sure. And then with regard to tracing, I think that people may not know that there's a big problem when folks commingle funds or when they're claiming that they have reimbursement rights. And I know that you're very adept at doing that. With regard to the marital standard of living, why do you think that that's important to do in a family law case?
Sure. Typically, there's two reasons that we're asked to do a marital standard of living. And it's usually in a long-term marriage that we're asked to do it, not for a short-term marriage, because it is affecting, it is dealing with spousal support. And if spousal support's not going to go on for a long period of time, then there may not be a large benefit to warrant us doing that analysis. But if there is going to be spousal support continuing for a substantial amount of time, it may be beneficial for two reasons. Income can fluctuate, and so you want to kind of see what was available towards the end of at least the marriage, the last few years maybe, to either set a cap on support if you think your income's going to shoot up, or if the person, let's say they're a trust fund individual. So you kind of need to see, okay, well, how much were the parties living on? Because maybe there isn't a whole lot of income there, but there is a big estate from which they were pulling out principal. And we need to see, well, how were they really spending to determine what that lifestyle was, and maybe use that as a basis for setting support. So I think there's a multitude of reasons that we're asked to do it. Typically, it's to set a cap. Other times, it's really to see how they were spending and how they were living, what the needs of the parties are.
Yeah. And, there's probably hundreds of issues that you assist us in. I just talked about the reports. One of the big ones that folks may not know is the Moore-Marsden analysis. There's two cases, marriage of Moore, marriage of Marsden. They essentially stand for the same proposition that when community money is being used to pay down the principal of, say, like a family residence that's a separate property of the other spouse, the community can start acquiring an interest in that. And in a long-term marriage, that could be substantial, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's so many little twists and turns of all the cases that have happened since Moore-Marsden that have made it so that the community can actually obtain a very substantial portion of real properties. But yeah, so that's an analysis actually that we get called to do even on some really small cases. Yeah. So sometimes the only asset that's really in the case is the family residence, and that might be the only thing we need to actually analyze. So that's actually a very big issue that we see quite often. Yeah, and it's way more complicated than what meets the eye. There's some programs that attorneys could tinker with, but if you're really going to do it right, I mean, you have to do it with somebody like Jennifer who takes into consideration tax things and tax considerations and stuff. Mm-hmm. So let's change the topic a little bit back to you. Why did you choose this profession? So it actually happened accidentally. So I was about to graduate from college with my accounting degree, and I was looking for a job, and I came across this ad on monster.com back then. And
that still exists.
It does still exist? Yeah. Okay, sorry.
You're still a young lady.
Okay. So I came across this ad, and I interviewed, and the people were wonderful, and I said, I don't really know what this is all about. You go to the website, it looked very much like a law firm. And I didn't really know what forensic accounting was or how that plays into anything. But I got the job there, and I started 2 weeks after I graduated and loved it, and have done, fairly well there. And I just kind of fell into it. And for me, it was great because I love numbers, but I didn't really know if I was going to enjoy doing audits. I didn't really know if I was going to enjoy doing taxes. And forensic accounting is wonderful because every day is something different. Even though it's all the same, we're doing property division, we're doing support, every case is so different, and they all have their nuances, and the laws change constantly, and it keeps you on your toes because you have to keep up on everything. So it's really been a great experience for me. I really enjoy it.
So did you ever think along the lines, before you got the job, that you'd be in a job that was kind of like a detective, where you're investigating and you're looking for clues and getting the aha moments?
No, I mean, I really just didn't have any preset conception of what it was going to be, and I really did fall into my lap. I actually started at the firm in the tracing department, so tracing became something very near and dear to me. Although I do everything in the firm, that's still something. I still run the tracing department. I'm actually the one that oversees that now. But it's just, I never expected to enjoy it the way that I do.
How cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite parts of the job?
I really enjoy the little nitty-gritty parts of tracing and carving things out and testifying. I actually think it's kind of fun. It's very nerve-wracking, and you're nervous to get on the stand. You don't know what anyone's going to ask you, but then once you get it all out there and you explain yourself, it's very it's something that's very enjoyable because you can get a satisfaction out of getting your point out there and having it said and seeing the results that you get in your cases. And as long as you're honest and you're doing everything with a reasoning, the courts are going to agree with you, or they may disagree with you, but they're going to understand that you're being honest and you're putting forth something reasonable.
Yeah, honesty is very important, and that's one thing about your firm is that if I'm ever on the other side, I know I'm dealing with an honest person.
Yeah.
I try not to be on the other side. Not to give away too much of the secret sauce, but how do you guys know so much about the law? I mean, it's very fascinating to me. You know, I don't know of any other firm that's like your firm where you're half attorney, half forensic accountants.
So, although we're not allowed to opine on the law and decide which cases apply to the matters at hand, we do take an interest in the law. So, our firm really does push us to get the weekly attorney briefcase, attorney briefcase updates where they tell you all the new cases that have come out. We read the cases. We have attorney briefcase on our computers so that if we have a question about what a case says, we can read it ourselves. Obviously, we go to the attorney and we say, what do you think? How should we apply it? But, we do want to have a background. Our office also puts on study groups all over Southern California.
Including Pasadena here?
Including Pasadena, yes. We have some in Santa Barbara. We have them in Ventura. We have them in the South Bay. We have them in Pasadena, Beverly Hills, the Valley. We have them in Orange County. I believe we're starting one in San Diego. So we do really have them all over Southern California. And we attend those and we listen to what the attorneys have to say. We have the judges speak. We attend bar association meetings. We go to the updates every year, the family law reviews. So we do keep ourselves updated on everything that's going on. And I do believe as a forensic accountant, it's something that is imperative and something you need to do. Even the Cal CPA organization provides an annual family law conference every year. So it's something that we should all be going to. And in that, the judges speak, attorneys speak, and the forensic accountants speak about the reports that we prepare. So I really think it's important to what we do to have a good knowledge base in order to prepare reports.
Yeah, and without a doubt, it separates you from everybody else. So could you describe the process? Let's say a client says, Don, I want Jennifer Magnes, but I'm afraid of, what the process is going to look like. What are you going to have the client do with respect to the production of documents?
So the very first thing we do is after we get retained and we've had kind of an initial discussion about the issues in the case is we're going to issue a document request. It might be very general. We're going to do a business appraisal, so these are the types of documents we need. Or we need to prepare a community property balance sheet. This is what we need. We always like to start with the parties' disclosures. Those are important documents. Those are the base of everything. Once we get those documents, we look them over. We probably will discuss them with the client. We may need some more information, some more documents. So there's a lot of back and forth in that discovery zone of this. And then we're going to prepare reports. It may be that we say to the client, look, you want to prove that you have separate property in this asset, but the costs of doing that analysis is going to exceed any benefit you could have, so we don't recommend that you go forward with that. Once we get the documents, that's something we can say, and I think that's helpful for clients to know where they really need to put their time and their energy and their money to get their best results. Other times, we have to just push through. If we have to value the business, we have to value the business. But we always meet with the client, we talk to them, but we always have to obtain the documents. That's the number one base for our reports.
Cool. And at some point, if there's a forensic accountant on the other side, I find this really fun, is if we go, the forensic accountants are going to talk to each other. And it seems like most of the time that's the beginning of the settlement, because when you meet with a competent forensic accountant, a lot gets done. Could you describe that process?
Yeah, so usually we exchange our reports. We can see then, we can do a side-by-side comparison so we know exactly where our differences are, where we're in agreement. And then the two sides of forensics can talk. And we can say, well, why did you do it this way? Why did you do it that way? Did you consider this issue? Did you consider that issue? And a lot of times we can make movements in our reports to bring them closer together. There's always going to be a legal issue, which is not our determination to make, where we say, well, we were advised to apply this case, or we were advised to apply that case, or, this isn't something that I can negotiate. So at least at that point, though, we know where our differences are. And then the forensic can go to the attorney and they can talk and they can say, well, this is where our strengths and this is where our weaknesses are. And, in my experience, this is what I've seen the court do. And they might go either way. It may be very judge dependent. Every facts of a case are different from another case. So it's really a great tool to knowing strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question before we move into a fun topic is, how early should a family law litigant engage the services of a forensic accountant if they need one?
From my perspective, as early as you possibly can. Getting us in right from the get-go means that we know everything that's transpired throughout the case. We've lived it with them. And we can actually get the case moving in a good direction right away. The worst is when we're getting in right before trial because it's a rush to get everything done. Discovery's already happened, and we may not have all the records that we need to do our reports. And you may be disadvantaged just trying to know the right steps to even get to trial. So from our perspective, as early as you can is always best.
Okay, and I agree with that. Okay, let's change the topics. Now, this is going to be something that I didn't even talk to you about this beginning, when you came in today. But I see forensic accountants as kind of detectives. I see them as not only problem solvers, but you're able to see things that when people are trying to hide money or they're underreporting their income. So a little bit of a detective. Do you have a favorite detective show or movie?
No.
Unbelievable. I would think that you, out of all people, would.
I mean, I enjoy a good mystery, and I do watch, I'm very bad. I do watch a lot of TV and a lot of movies.
Oh, welcome to the club.
Yes, I'm very guilty of that. I do love that, but I don't have a favorite.
Sherlock Holmes. You probably don't even know who Columbo was, do you?
I mean, I know the name.
Okay. Well, great.
Yes.
Well, Jennifer, thank you very much for joining us today. This was really, really informative, and I hope that you could join us again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, and thank you for joining us on Exhibit A, and we'll see you next time.